Gentlemen, the media bias is my next story tonight. And as I said, in my view, in my humble opinion, the 2024 US presidential election, the race is not between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. The reality is, it is a battle between Donald Trump and the media. Let's debate.
I will end inflation. I will stop the massive invasion of criminals into our country.
Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it?
Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. You're fired.
According to various reports, the presidential race coverage between former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris has been extremely lopsided. An article by a Western media house and its contrasting editorial take is a credible example of the lopsided media coverage. Take a look. The title of an article published on August 12th by a Western media outlet read, "Vance wants to raise the child tax credit to $5,000. Here's why that could be difficult." Now, the same media company, in an article published on August 16th, went ahead with the title, "Harris calls for expanded child tax credit of up to $6,000 for families with newborns." The use of the word difficult is used while talking about Vance, but when Harris proposes the same idea, it automatically and magically stops being difficult. This is the dubious media bias that persists in the 2024 US presidential polls.
Take a look at what happened.
Despite the shocking assassination attempt against former US President Donald Trump, various media platforms went ahead and questioned the legitimacy of the assassination bid itself. Many media channels have run lines like "the case for Kamala Harris" and "the only patriotic choice for president." These lines clearly show how there is a certain media bias at play in furthering Harris's political agenda. While on the other hand, the terminology used for former President Donald Trump is completely contrasting to the words that have been directed towards Harris. A media house described Trump's 2024 poll strategy as "say anything, make up anything." Big questions with regard to the bias of the media, but all eyes are now on the key race to the 270 mark.
Okay, let's get 2 points of view in. Ashok Bhatt is a former California State Water Commissioner and a Kamala Harris supporter. And Francis Anthony is a business strategist from Baltimore. And we have with us James Marlow, who believes that the media has been biased. I hope that was correct. Can I ask you, James, what your take is on the way the media has conducted itself in this election?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I believe that there's 248 countries around the world. There's 193 who are registered with the United Nations. And I believe that almost, if not all of those countries, of course, have media bias. And that's pretty much accepted these days. But I think it's fair to say, whether it's a news network, let's take America, for example, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, I think it's right for them to say that they do head towards the political left. And there's nothing wrong with that if you actually say it, because I know that the two right-wing networks, Fox and the more right, Newsmax, openly say that they are right-wing, but of course they allow all opinions on. They actually cover all opinions, and that's the main thing. First, be honest to say where you are politically, and then afterwards get everyone on and debate about it.
So this time the bias has been very extreme. Why has it become personal, Francis? It's almost as if they are vested interest in this. And they are not even bothered about whether they need to be seen as neutral. In previous elections, the media was pretending to be neutral, all these media groups. This time they have given up that pretense and they have gone all out. Why is that, Francis?
I just want to give a few counterpoints to what was just said. For example, the Washington Post just did not endorse Kamala Harris. Bezos had a role to play in that, and that was prominent. It was discussed a lot. LA Times is another prominent newspaper that refused to endorse Kamala Harris. There was also a K-file investigation from CNN as of yesterday into the way the Kamala Harris campaign runs different ads in Michigan and in Pennsylvania, depending on who they're targeting. That is Muslim voters versus Jewish voters. Again, to be clear, this was CNN. And then there was also the CNN town hall with Anderson Cooper, I want to say 10 days ago, a couple of weeks ago, where there were some really difficult follow-up questions, putting her in a difficult spot, forcing her to explain her flip-flops and her contradicting positions about the Mexico wall. So I'm sure it seems that way. Perhaps there is a grain of truth to some of these allegations, but that's not to say this. And
but
just
that's
know
an
that,
odd question, Francis. That's a standard tactic. One odd question to try and balance it out. You know, the one story out of 100 that would be seen to be slightly critical of Kamala Harris, then get that overplayed to say that we are balanced. They're not balanced. My question was, how is it? Isn't it very shocking, Ashok, maybe you can take that it has become the norm for a media house to endorse Kamala Harris, like all media have become groupies. Why has the media become a Kamala Harris groupie? What is their skin in this? Like, what is their agenda in this?
It is not true that the media is totally on the side of the Kamala Harris. Traditional, like LA Times or the Washington Post and certain other newspaper or other media houses were the Democratic side endorsing always, which were not endorsed at this time due to the Trump and his allies that they tried to be push them, threaten, and they didn't endorse to her. So that is not the point. Kamala Harris is a grassroots person. She is a very, very deep grassroots person who is always connected with the voters, connected with the organizations, connected with the unions. She is a very, very humble and then very strong-minded woman who never lost a single election.
No, that's not my point. No, Ashok, see, let's be realistic about this. It's predominantly controversies around Trump. But when it comes to plagiarism by Kamala Harris, her lack of obvious intelligence, her incomprehensible ability to frame sentences that do not look like they are being read off an auto cue, allegations against her husband, all of these things are downplayed. I mean, it's becoming, there's sort of fascist temperament this time in the media. If you are not with Kamala Harris, then we will leave you out. You know, it's happening. And all across the world, I think the belief is it's Trump versus the media. Kamala Harris is generally seen to be an unintelligent person who is being propped up there and says whatever is written in her script. When she does not have a script, she can't even speak properly. There is a genuine issue. So, you know, why so much bias? Peter, I can understand a little bit of a tilt, but this is not a tilt anymore in the US. What will they do if Trump wins?
I think the reason why the media seems to be one-sided in the way you're suggesting is that people recognize that Trump is not a traditional candidate.
He's not a uneducated person or the bias or the certain type of a person. She is a very dedicated, strong, focused, and very ground to earth worker. She never lost a single election. 2 times district attorney, 2 times attorney general, 1 time senator, and 1 time vice president. Never had lost an election due to her intellectual values and her personality, not because of any personal favors or anything else. She is a people person. She is a very connected with all the unions and the low-income people, middle-class people.
This reminds me a little bit about the Brexit situation in the UK. You know, where anybody who was for exit was deemed to be evil. the media almost gave the victory to the other side and couldn't reconcile to the fact that many people wanted to get out of Europe. I think the media is not, if I were to go by the media, the simple question would be, why is this race too close to call? You have the entire media with you, and still the race is too close to call. Is the media not reading something that is visible to everybody on the ground? Or are they too detached, too elitist? Peter, what's your take?
Well, first of all, Arnab, when you're talking about the media, you're talking about CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, New York Times, and Washington Post. That is not where most Americans get their information from, for better or for worse now. So with a younger generation, my students, they don't watch that. They don't listen to that. They're getting their information from other places. And those other places, whether it's Twitter, X, or other social media outlets, can be very, very biased. They're based on these algorithms that reinforce what people already think. But the thing we have got to keep in mind is the media's reaction is partly based on what Trump has said and done before. Trump has not only been twice impeached, a convicted criminal, somebody who tried to overthrow the election in 2020, somebody who still lies about the outcome and doesn't accept the results, and that he's appealed to the worst tendencies in American life: misogyny, racism, hatred of immigrants, fear. I mean, there's a reason why the media reacts this way. Now, the question you're asking is the interesting one. Why hasn't the public responded in the same way? And that's scary to me. The fact that half the public appears to still be supporting a man who is is just running a campaign of hatred and negativity.
No, these words of hatred are very general. Peter, see, there is obviously a constituency in America which buys the argument for stronger borders. Now, you can call that hatred, or you can look at that as a pro-internal security campaign. There are two ways of looking at it. That it's an argument.
Arnab, can I explain?
Yeah, sure, please.
So it's not that everybody is concerned about unfettered immigration of that sort. What Trump has done is he's said that these immigrants are criminals who are killing and raping people. When we know that
what Trump has done, okay, so here's my counter. What Trump has done is carry out a very clever campaign in which he takes examples of terrible crimes committed against Americans, including 12-year-old children, by illegal immigrants. And he says that this is a classic example of someone who, due to Kamala Harris and Biden's policies, was taken out of prison. And this is what the person did: killed a child a few weeks after leaving prison. Obviously, if there was no fact in what he said, then why is that fact? Why are these stories gaining currency among the people?
That's a good question. So when he says, for example, that Haitians in Ohio are eating people's pets, that story has been refuted over and over again. He's been told that by his own advisors, and he repeats it anyway. This man
No. The fact is, as far as the cat story is concerned, it is a story that this media chooses to emphasize on, because you want to pick up this cat eating story and make it part of the New York Times narrative. Why wouldn't you look at more substantial issues that are being raised here? You see, I'll give you one example, Peter. The Associated Press, when there was the assassination attempt on Trump, refused. Francis, they refused initially to even accept it was an assassination attempt. They said there were some loud noises. Now, how can a media house not know the difference between an assassination attempt and loud noises? This is an obvious and implicit bias, yeah? There's no point denying it. I mean, you can say, we don't like him, we are going to go against him. But to claim that there is any neutrality is...
No, I never claimed there's any neutrality.
Francis,
say that
the media is always
unlike
very
Ashok,
biased.
I'm not a fanboy of Kamala Harris. I don't think she's some kind of a messiah. I don't think she's any kind of an intellectual giant. She's not. But that aside, I think if we're just talking about the fairness of media coverage, I do want to address something that Peter just mentioned about immigration. And I think this is a little disingenuous. I've seen other people do this. Trump does not target immigrants, but illegal immigrants. And I think that's an important distinction. By conflating the two, you lend color and credence to this notion that Trump is basically against all immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself, but I'm a legal immigrant. And I think if you go back to his rhetoric, consistently, he has talked about illegal immigrants and the harm that they do to the American economy. And I think we can all agree on that. The fact that there are 20 million people here who should not be here, and they have not, that issue hasn't been adequately covered. But that said, like I said, everybody was anticipating an October surprise. Looks like we had a November surprise yesterday because the CNN's K-file investigation just dumped this report about the way the Kamala Harris campaign has been devious in the way it targets Jewish voters in Pennsylvania versus Muslim voters in Michigan. And I think you could argue that that would benefit Trump a day before Election Day. So I just want to put that out there that, yes, it can seem like it's unfair, but I think there's plenty of evidence to the contrary as well.
No, I'm just thinking here that my own sense is that when the media takes such a strong position, you might end up with counter polarization. And I think this time they have gone a little bit too far. You look at this AP report. In his third presidential bid, Trump is facing an opponent who stages her own massive rallies, calling further attention that his crowds, however enthusiastic, have failed to fill large venues and often thinned out as he spoke. This is not an agency copy. This is pure opinion. And what we are seeing in the coverage of Trump is pure opinion. And it is a fact here, James, that when there is so much opinion that is thrown about, it often leads to counter opinion. So I do believe that these media groups could be doing Kamala Harris a disservice. Because
it is opinion, it is not news, as you say, and that's the difference between the news networks today and the news networks that we had around 30, 40 years ago. I've been working in news desks on television networks, radio networks, and one or two newspapers as well, and you see people on those desks, they could be the editor, they could be individual journalists, that certainly have a certain bias towards a certain political party, or perhaps a politician, a prime minister, a president, or even a country like Israel, like the United States, like Europe. So this is well known. If I could just pick up on a couple of things that have been said earlier. A lot of media does criticize Donald Trump, and sometimes he fluffs his words and he says very stupid things, and it's right to criticize them. I think some of the networks do it more to Donald Trump than they do it towards Kamala Harris. So let me just quote something that she said just a couple of days ago. I think it was in one of her rallies in Georgia, 2 or 3 days ago, possibly 4, because I lip in and nip out sometimes to hear what the politicians are actually saying. So this is Kamala Harris's words, and I'm quoting right now: Donald Trump wants to ban abortion across the United States. Not true. Donald Trump wishes to go ahead and limit contraception. Not true. Donald Trump, in the same sentence, by the way, Donald Trump wishes to monitor every woman who's pregnant. Not true. Now, I'm just wondering how many people actually picked that up on the news networks. She said that it was a live feed. It wasn't artificial. True. But again, you've got some networks who will focus on fluffs that Donald Trump makes. And as I said, he makes a lot of them. But they're not doing the same for Kamala Harris. And I think you should be equal. The other thing as well is that I'm in London at the moment. I'm in the UK.
Yes.
And I can tell you, we just had a general election, and there are some very powerful, good, well-known journalists who really, really go for those candidates and those prime minister candidates looking to become the prime minister. They quiz them on every single thing. We don't see that in the United States. For example, Kamala Harris. I was just going to add, just to finish the sentence, Kamala Harris hears quite a lot that people are struggling with their grocery bills, that they're struggling to put petrol, gasoline into their cars. All she says is, we hear and then she makes a whole salad worth of words, which doesn't seem to make any sense. There should be somebody pushing. Fine. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Now, it's fine if she hasn't got a clue. Maybe politicians don't have a clue. They need to get into office and see what the advisors tell them. That's fine. But at least push them a little bit. And right now, this is not about voting for Donald Trump or voting for Kamala Harris. It's about keeping the other person out, the one that you fear the most.
Yeah, that is true. And one thought I have, just to wrap this up, maybe, what if it's very close to call? I think because of the way the American election results come out with channels, announcing, networks announcing, calling the election and all that, and then the official announcement coming 2 or 3 months later, it's a recipe for chaos, Peter. Because what if it's very close to call? What if Trump has an edge? Then who will delegitimize the election? Will all these media groups accept the election? I think they are so vested in it that should Trump have a lead, they will go all out to delegitimize him. And that's a danger to democracy. In the process of countering a candidate, you will be fighting the democratic process. I think that's a real worry as far as, we're looking at it. What do you think, Peter?
At the ground, level, if you see, then Kamala Harris is the leading. Trump has no merit. His words are not true.
Okay, Ashok, say Trump is a bad man, he's terrible, he wears the wrong clothes, he walks the wrong way, he eats the wrong food. But my question to Peter was that what if he wins? What will all of these media groups do? I think they're going to go all out to call the election for Kamala Harris.
Arnab, well, we have a track record on this. If you look at what happened in 2016 and 2020, there was some grumbling in 2016 because Hillary Clinton was so far up in the polls, but they accepted it, and she accepted the results. In 2020, we saw the opposite happen. We saw Donald Trump deny the results of the election, even though his advisors told him he had lost. He went out there and lied about it, and then did everything he could, first in the courts, which is legitimate, but 60 courts, including the ones with judges who he appointed, said that his cases had no merit at all, and they threw them out. And still, Trump lied and tried to overturn the results of the election. That case is still being prosecuted in federal courts, and if he loses this election, he could end up in jail. That's part of why he's so desperate to win. But the Democrats haven't done that. That's not been their history. Even in 2000, when Al Gore won the popular vote and the Supreme Court overturned the results of the election or staged what I consider a coup, Gore went along with it. The Democrats have not reacted in the same way the Republicans have in that regard.
No, of course.
I agree with you on the Al Gore thing, very quickly. I agree with that. You're absolutely right. But I think things are different today, very much so. And I don't think either side is going to concede. I don't think Kamala Harris is going to concede because it's going to be so close, unless it's obvious, unless somebody really is past that 270. But I think the courts will decide in January. The courts will decide, and then everyone has to abide by that decision.
Well, then it's going to be...
Democrats are very civilized. If you see the Al Gore timing, if you see the Hillary Clinton timing,
as a
every time
counterpoint
they
to
accept
the
it in the
mainstream
right
media.
decisions. So, if the Trump is uncivilized, Republicans are uncivilized completely, and then they had created the issues in 2020, and they will do the same thing in 2024. If the elections are going the other side. And it looks like that the Kamala Harris is going to get 273 electoral, between 273 to 276. Is the ground results are very clear at the moment. The surging is very strong on the Democrat side. Is the Pennsylvania is getting by the Democrats now look like in a way that the things are going on. Nevada is going towards to the Democrats. Now the Michigan and the...
No, I think you're calling the election too early, Ashok. Let's just wait. Let's just wait. All I'd say is people are so desperate. I don't think anyone's going to concede. And that's my worry for the American democracy and certainly for the American media. I believe, okay, there can be bias. We also take a stand sometimes, Republic also has its own point of view on political issues. But this extent of prejudice and desperation, I think the media got too thick into the battle that is owned by someone else. They become parties. And that is going to be a dark chapter in the history of American media. Ladies and gentlemen, on the other side tonight, why Wikipedia is not